The weight of secrets. The antiseptic smell of the laboratory had become more familiar to Prisha Nair than the scent of her own apartment. At 32, she had already established herself as one of the most promising researchers at Arogia Memorial Hospital, her work on autoimmune diseases earning quiet respect among her peers. The digital clock on the wall read 11:42 p.m., but time had little meaning when she was absorbed in her work. Still here, Dr. Nair? The building might start charging. You rent. Prisha looked up to see Dr. Vikram Sengupta leaning against the doorframe, his white coat exchanged for a charcoal suit that somehow looked just as clinical on his tall frame. As the hospital's director of research, he had every right to question her hours, but the gentle amusement in his voice suggested concern rather than criticism. Just finishing up this culture analysis, she replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The protein markers are showing promising results. Vikram moved closer, his interest in the research genuine. This was what had drawn Prisha to him over the past 2 years. Not just his brilliance or the quiet intensity in his dark eyes, but his unwavering dedication to their shared mission. Every conversation with him left her feeling both intellectually stimulated and oddly seen in a way that made her heart race in a most unprofessional manner. The grant committee will be impressed, he said, studying her notes. But they'd be more impressed if their star researcher didn't collapse from exhaustion. I'm fine, she insisted, though the dull ache behind her eyes suggested otherwise. At least let me drive you home. It's late and the parking garage isn't well lit. Prisha hesitated, then nodded. These small moments, the drive home, the occasional coffee, the comfortable silences, had become precious to her. Dangerous territories where professional admiration blurred into something more vulnerable. Later that night, her phone buzzed with a message that shattered her carefully constructed world. Her brother Aditya, voice breaking. Prisha, I messed up. The loans, they're coming after the house. I didn't know how to tell you. The truth spilled out in a devastating flood. Gambling debts, loan sharks, threats. The family home in Kerala where their parents still lived, now at risk. The same home that had funded her medical education. Their parents' retirement savings depleted to support her dreams. Morning found her red-eyed, calculations scattered across her kitchen table. Her salary, substantial as it was, couldn't cover the debt. The specialized clinic in Puducherry that had been recruiting her offered less prestige but significantly higher pay due to its remote location. They needed an answer immediately. As Prisha walked into the hospital that morning, she felt the weight of her decision pressing against her chest. Vikram greeted her with coffee and excitement about their research presentation next week. He hand-brushed hers as he passed the cup, and she allowed herself one moment to memorize the feeling. That night, she typed her resignation letter with trembling fingers, tears blurring the screen. No explanations, no goodbyes. Just a clean break that would free Vikram from any obligation to help. His career was ascending rapidly. The last thing he needed was her complicated life derailing his focus. By dawn, she was gone, leaving only a formal letter on his desk, hoping the absence of emotion would make it easier for both of them to forget. Vanishing notes. The resignation letter sat on Vikram's desk like an unexploded bomb. He read it for the 10th time, searching for clues between the sterile formal lines. Prisha's usually meticulous handwriting showed subtle signs of pressure, ink that pressed too hard in places, breaking the otherwise flawless script. I hereby tender my resignation effective immediately. Personal circumstances necessitate my departure. The research notes are organized and accessible on the shared drive. No explanation, no forwarding address, no real goodbye after 2 years of collaboration that had evolved into something neither of them had named but both had felt. The lab felt impossibly empty without her quiet presence. She cleared out her apartment too, reported Divya, the immunology department's head nurse and Prisha's closest friend at the hospital. Landlord says she paid 3 months' rent in advance and left the keys in an envelope. Did she say anything? To you? Vikram asked, trying to keep his voice professionally neutral. Divya hesitated. Nothing specific. Just that sometimes life forces difficult choices. In the weeks that followed, Vikram threw himself into work with an intensity that alarmed even the most dedicated staff. The research continued. Prisha's methods were too thorough to leave room for failure, but the heart of the project seemed to have vanished with her. He found himself standing in the lab at midnight, staring at her empty chair, replaying conversations for missed signals. "The board wants to know if you're planning to replace Dr. Nair," his assistant mentioned carefully, 3 weeks after Prisha's disappearance. "She's not replaceable," Vikram snapped, then immediately regretted his tone. "Post the position, standard requirements." Meanwhile, 500 kilometers away, Prisha settled into a small cottage near the shoreline of Puducherry. The coastal clinic where she now worked treated mostly local fishermen and their families, a far cry from the cutting-edge research she'd left behind. The pay was better as promised, and every rupee beyond her modest living expenses went directly to clearing her brother's debt. "You're overqualified, Dr. Nair," Dr. Subramaniam, the elderly clinic director, had said during her interview. "But we're fortunate to have you." Her new life took shape around simple routines: morning walks along the beach before work, evening meals at the small restaurant where the owner, Mrs. Lakshmi, had taken to saving her favorite fish curry, weekends spent reading medical journals, staying connected to the field even as she distanced herself from her past. Nights were the hardest. In the quiet darkness, memories of Vikram's voice would find her, his excitement when discussing new research, his dry humor during tedious meetings, the way he said her name with respect that felt like something more. She'd catch herself reaching for her phone to share some observation, before remembering that connection was severed. 6 weeks after her departure, Prisha sat on her small porch, watching the moon's reflection ripple across the Bay of Bengal. Her phone buzzed with a text from Aditya. "First loan cleared, thank you DI, I'm so sorry." Progress. The sacrifice was yielding results. She should have felt relief, but instead found herself wondering if Vikram had replaced her yet, if the protein markers had proven viable, if he ever thought of her at all. Inside her cottage, pinned to a bulletin board above her desk, was a newspaper clipping, Vikram at a medical conference presenting their research. In the photo, he looked thinner, more severe. The article praised his work but made no mention of the researcher who had developed half the methodology. "It's better this way," she whispered, to herself, a mantra that had yet to ring true. Clean breaks heal faster. That night she dreamed of the hospital lab, of samples and slides, and Vikram's hand accidentally brushing hers. She woke with tears drying on her cheeks, and the conviction that she had made the only possible choice. Her family needed her more than her heart needed its foolish dreams. In her inbox unread sat an email from Divya. "He's searching for you, not just professionally. Be prepared." Connecting threads, the monsoon season brought relentless rain to Puducherry, transforming the usually serene coastline into a tumultuous landscape. Prisha had grown accustomed to the rhythm of the small clinic, the fishermen with their weather-worn hands, pregnant mothers from the village, elderly patients who brought her homemade sweets despite her protests. It was meaningful work, if not the groundbreaking research she had left behind. "Dr. Nair, emergency." The clinic receptionist burst through the door of the examination room where Prisha was checking a child's ear infection. The emergency was a young woman, 8 months pregnant, convulsing on a stretcher as her panicked husband explained they had been traveling when she collapsed. Prisha recognized the symptoms immediately, preeclampsia with complications she hadn't seen since her residency. "We need to stabilize her and transfer to Chennai," Prisha ordered, falling into the decisive calm that had made her exceptional at Arogya. "Start magnesium sulfate. I need blood pressure readings every 2 minutes." As the small clinic staff, mobilized, a tall woman in rain-soaked clothes stepped forward from the group that had brought the patient in. "I'm Dr. Radhika Mehta, endocrinologist from Bangalore Medical Institute. I was on the same bus. Can I assist?" For 6 intense hours, Prisha and Dr. Mehta worked together to stabilize the patient until the ambulance from Chennai arrived. Only, after the crisis passed, did recognition flash across Dr. Mehta's face. "You're Prisha Nair," she said, handing Prisha a cup of much-needed tea. "The autoimmune researcher. I attended your lecture at the national conference last year." Prisha tensed. I was part of that research team, yes. Part of it? The methodology had your fingerprints all over it. Radhika studied her with undisguised curiosity. The medical community was puzzled when you disappeared before publication. Vikram Sengupta has cited your preliminary work in every paper since. The mention of his name sent a sharp pain through Prisha's chest. He's continuing the research? Continuing it. He's expanded it into 3 new studies. Though between us, Radhika lowered her voice, he seems different, intense in a way that concerns his colleagues. At the Delhi symposium last month, he spent more time asking about researchers who might have relocated to southern India than discussing his findings. That night, after Radhika departed with promises of confidentiality that Prisha only half believed, she found herself searching online for Vikram's recent publications. There, in the acknowledgments of each paper, this research builds upon foundational work by Dr. Prisha Nair, whose methodological contributions remain invaluable. He hadn't erased her. She wasn't sure if that made things better or worse. Back in Mumbai, Vikram sat in his office surrounded by financial records and personnel files he had no business accessing. The administrative assistant who had helped him would probably lose her job if anyone discovered the breach. But desperation had pushed ethical boundaries he once thought immovable. Why would she leave a rising career for a clinic paying barely enough to live on? He muttered, studying Prisha's bank statements. The answer came in the form of regular, substantial transfers to an account in Kerala, far more than her modest lifestyle could justify. A knock interrupted his concentration. Divya entered without waiting for permission, her expression grave. You need to stop this, Vikram. It's becoming obsessive. She didn't just leave the hospital. She vanished as if escaping something. He replied, pushing the files toward her. Look at these transfers, nearly 80% of her income going to a single account. Divya sighed. Her brother's account. I wasn't supposed to tell you this, but he gambled away their family's savings, put their parents' home at risk. She took the higher-paying job at the coastal clinic to pay off his debts. Vikram froze. Why wouldn't she tell me? I could have helped. Would you have wanted her charity if your family was in trouble? Divya asked pointedly. Besides, she thought she was protecting you. Protecting me? The concept seemed absurd. From having to choose between your career and helping her. From scandal by association if her brother's situation became public. From distraction. Divya paused. She cared for you too much to become your burden. The realization hit Vikram with physical force. All those evenings working late, the careful distance she maintained despite their obvious connection. It hadn't been lack of interest. It had been Prisha's way of protecting what she thought he valued most. His ambition. I need to find her, he said, decision crystallizing. She's in Puducherry, Divya finally admitted. Working at a coastal clinic under Dr. Subramaniam. But, Vikram, she chose to leave. Be sure about why you're going after her. That night, as a storm gathered over the Arabian Sea, Vikram booked a flight to Chennai. In his briefcase, research papers with her name properly credited, a grant proposal that would fund her work at any institution she chose, and the resignation letter she'd left, now worn at the edges from handling. He had no plan beyond finding her. For a man accustomed to methodical preparation, this journey felt like stepping off a cliff. Yet for the first time in months, the constant ache in his chest had eased, replaced by something that felt dangerously like hope. Stormy revelations, the cyclone warnings had emptied Puducherry's usually bustling streets. Prisha hurried home from the clinic, the wind already strong enough to bend palm trees into dangerous arcs. Dr. Subramaniam had insisted they close early, concerned about staff safety as the weather reports grew increasingly dire. The normally 15-minute walk took nearly 30 as she battled gusts that threatened to knock her sideways. Her cottage, perched on slightly elevated ground near the shoreline, creaked ominously as she approached. Inside, she moved efficiently, filling water containers, checking battery-powered lanterns, securing windows. The power flickered once, twice, then stabilized. According to the radio, they had perhaps 3 hours before the worst hit. The knock came as she was taping the last window. At first, she thought it was debris hitting the door, but its deliberate rhythm was unmistakably human. Cautiously, she peered through the peephole, then stumbled backward as if struck. Vikram stood on her porch, drenched and windblown, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled by the elements. In his hand was a familiar piece of paper, her resignation letter now protected in a plastic sleeve but visibly worn. For a moment, she considered pretending she wasn't home, but the light visible through her windows made that impossible. With trembling fingers, she unlocked the door. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice barely audible above the wind. "There's a cyclone coming." "I'm aware," he replied, rainwater dripping from his hair onto his collar. "The last flight out was canceled. May I come in?" Wordlessly, she stepped aside. The contrast was jarring. Vikram's tall frame in her small living room, his sophisticated presence against her simple furnishings. He seemed to take up all the available air. "How did you find me?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Divya, eventually, though your brother's bank records provided the why before she gave me the where." He set the letter on her coffee table. "You left without giving me a choice, Prisha." Lightning flashed, illuminating the tension between them. "There was no choice. To give," she countered. "My family needed me." "And you decided unilaterally that I couldn't handle that information, that I wouldn't want to help? It wasn't your problem to solve." The words burst from her with unexpected force. "You were about to present to the International Research Board. The hospital was considering you for chief medical officer. The last thing you needed was association with someone whose family had debt collectors calling. The power chose that moment to fail completely, plunging them into semi-darkness." Prisha fumbled for a lantern, its soft glow creating shadows that seemed to dance with their unspoken feelings. "You never once asked what I needed," Vikram said quietly, the storm outside nearly drowning his words. "Or what I wanted." The wind howled louder, rain pelting the windows like bullets. A particularly violent gust rattled the entire structure. "We should move away from the windows," Prisha suggested, professional instincts taking over. "The bathroom is the safest place if it gets worse." They gathered essentials, water, lanterns, radio, first aid kit, and settled in the small bathroom, at the center of the cottage. Sitting on opposite sides of the confined space, they created an illusion of distance that did nothing to ease the emotional proximity. "Your research is gaining international attention," she offered, desperate to steer toward safer topics. "Our research," he corrected. "I've credited you in every publication." "I saw that, thank you. I didn't do it out of professional courtesy, Prisha. I did it because that work belongs to both of us, just like—" He stopped abruptly, running, a hand through his damp hair. "Just like what?" She pressed, heart hammering. The bathroom walls seemed to contract around them as the storm reached its crescendo outside, mirroring the emotional tempest within. "Just like everything else we built. Together," he finally said. "The research was never just research for me, it was time with you, coffee at midnight, debates over methodology that turned into conversations about life. You weren't just my colleague, Prisha. You were becoming essential." Her breath caught. "I couldn't risk becoming a burden to you." "That wasn't your decision to make," he countered, frustration evident. "You robbed us both of agency. Do you know what these months have been like? Wondering if I'd imagined the connection between us? If you'd left because of something I'd done? I left because I couldn't bear to watch you sacrifice your career to help me." The admission tore from her throat. "My brother's gambling put my parents at risk of homelessness. The scandal would have attached itself to you by association. The board is conservative. They would have questioned your judgment for being involved with me." "Involved with you," he repeated softly. Is that what we were? The storm outside reached a deafening crescendo, the cottage groaning under its assault. In the confined space of the bathroom, with only lantern light between them, pretense seemed pointless. "It's what I feared we were becoming," she admitted. "What I wanted but couldn't allow myself to have." Vikram moved closer, until they sat side by side against the bathtub, shoulders touching. I would have helped you find a solution. That didn't involve disappearing. I would have waited until your family situation stabilized. I would have done anything except let you face it alone, if you had only trusted me enough to tell me. As the cyclone raged outside, they sat in silence, the weight of miscommunication and unspoken feelings heavy between them. The storm had forced a confrontation neither had been prepared for, yet both had secretly been seeking. How much of the debt remains? He finally asked. About 30%. Another 4 months at my current salary. Her voice was small but steady. And then, the question hung between them, not just about the debt, but about everything that would come after. For the first time since leaving Mumbai, Prisha allowed herself to contemplate a future beyond obligation. I don't know, she admitted. I haven't let myself think that far ahead. As the worst of the storm began to subside, they remained in that small bathroom, two brilliant minds finally confronting the emotional equations they'd both been too cautious to solve. Healing Horizons morning arrived with unexpected gentleness after the night's fury. Prisha awoke on her couch. They had moved from the bathroom once the cyclone downgraded, to find Vikram already awake, making tea in her small kitchen as if he belonged there. Sunlight streamed through windows that had somehow survived intact, casting everything in a clarity that seemed symbolic. The roads are blocked, he reported, handing her a steaming cup. Relief teams are clearing debris, but it will be at least a day before travel resumes. Prisha nodded, cradling the warmth between her palms. The night's confessions hung in the air between them, no longer hidden by darkness or drowned by the storm. In daylight, their truths required action, not just acknowledgement. I need to check on the clinic, she said. Many of our patients live in vulnerable coastal homes. Vikram nodded. I'll come with you. They walked through a transformed landscape. Palm trees lay uprooted, fishing boats overturned on the beach, debris scattered across roads. Yet alongside the destruction, Prisha noticed something unexpected. The community already mobilizing. Neighbors clearing each other's pathways, fishermen salvaging what they could of their vessels, children collecting scattered belongings. The clinic had survived with minimal damage, and Dr. Subramaniam was already there, organizing supplies for those whose homes hadn't fared as well. Ah, Dr. Nair, he greeted her warmly, then raised an eyebrow at her companion. This is Dr. Vikram Sengupta from Arogya Memorial in Mumbai, she introduced, watching the recognition dawn in her mentor's eyes. The researcher? Your paper on autoimmune responses in tropical environments was brilliant, Dr. Subramaniam said, shaking Vikram's hand enthusiastically. That methodology was largely Dr. Nair's work, Vikram replied, his gaze finding hers. I've merely been building upon her foundation. Throughout the day, they worked alongside the clinic staff, treating minor injuries and helping coordinate relief efforts. Prisha watched Vikram adapt seamlessly to their modest facilities, his expertise evident but never condescending. He spoke to patients with the same respect he showed at Arogya, whether they were fishermen or academic colleagues. By evening, with immediate needs addressed, they walked along the shore where the violent sea had calmed to gentle waves. The destruction around them contrasted with a sky painted in spectacular sunset colors. I've been thinking, Vikram began, hands in his pockets as they navigated around debris, about what happens next. Prisha tensed slightly. Meaning? I brought something to show you. He produced a folded document from his jacket. A research grant proposal. Joint leadership based wherever the principal investigators choose. Fully funded for 3 years. She took the paper with trembling fingers. You're offering me my job back? No, he corrected gently. I'm offering us both something new. The hospital board approved a satellite research center focusing on autoimmune responses in coastal populations. It needs directors with experience in both advanced research and community medicine. Prisha stared at him. You created a position that combines what we both do. The research has merit on its own, he insisted. But yes, I was hoping it might create a bridge between our worlds. He hesitated. There's no pressure to return to Mumbai. The center could be established here, or in Kerala near your family. The point is flexibility and partnership. She studied the proposal, mind racing through possibilities. And my family situation? Already addressed. His expression grew serious. After Divya explained, I connected your brother with a financial counselor who specializes in gambling recovery. The remaining debt has been consolidated into a low-interest loan through the hospital's credit union. He's been attending support meetings for 6 weeks now. Shock rendered her momentarily speechless. You did this without knowing if you'd ever find me? I did it because it needed doing, Vikram replied simply. Whether you returned or not, your family shouldn't suffer. Tears filled her eyes, not of gratitude, but recognition of what she'd nearly lost through her protective isolation. I've been so focused on not being a burden that I forgot what it means to allow someone to care. And I've been so focused on professional achievement that I didn't realize what truly mattered until you were gone. He took her hand, tentatively at first, then with certainty when she didn't pull away. We both made mistakes, Prisha. They stood in comfortable silence, watching fishing boats that had survived the storm venture cautiously back to sea. The metaphor wasn't lost on either of them. The research center will take months to establish, she finally said. What happens, in the meantime? I've taken a sabbatical, he admitted. 3 months to help develop the proposal into a full program. I was hoping to spend it here, learning about the community health aspects from you. If that's acceptable. A smile tugged at her lips. Dr. Subramaniam has been asking for help with our diabetes prevention program. Perfect. I'll need somewhere to stay, of course. His tone remained professional, but his eyes held a question. Puducherry has several nice hotels, she replied, matching his formal tone before allowing her smile to widen. But my cottage has a spare room that survived the storm. The rent is reasonable, just coffee in the mornings and conversation in the evenings. They continued walking, hands still joined, past homes where repairs had already begun. A woman Prisha had treated waved from her partially damaged porch. A fisherman called out a greeting, showing off a boat he'd managed to right after the storm. You've built a life here, Vikram observed. Parts of one, she corrected. There were pieces missing. As they reached her cottage, now bathed in the day's final light, Prisha felt something she hadn't experienced in months. The sensation of a future expanding rather than contracting. The weight that had pressed against her chest since reading her brother's desperate message had finally begun to lighten. I still have 2 months left on my clinic contract, she said as they climbed her porch steps. I won't abandon my patients. I wouldn't expect you to, he replied. Good work is worth seeing through to completion. That evening, they sat on her small porch, medical journals and research notes spread between them, seamlessly falling back into the intellectual partnership that had first drawn them together. But now, without the barriers of unspoken feelings and secret burdens, each shared idea felt like building something stronger, something that honored both their professional passions and personal connection. When Vikram's hand found hers across the table, neither acknowledged it explicitly. They simply continued their discussion, fingers intertwined, as if this too was a natural extension of their research, a hypothesis proven correct after careful testing. Outside, the community continued its recovery, rebuilding what the storm had damaged. And in a small coastal cottage, 2 people who had tried to protect each other through separation discovered a more powerful truth, that some bonds grow stronger when tested, that vulnerability requires more courage than self-sacrifice, and that the most important discoveries often come not in laboratories, but in moments of honest connection. The research would continue, brilliant and groundbreaking. But now it would be built on a foundation neither of them would again mistake for weakness, the foundation of 2 lives deliberately chosen, not despite their complications, but with full awareness of them. As night fell over the healing coastline, They began drafting plans for a future neither had dared to imagine 6 months earlier. One where professional passion and personal connection strengthened rather than threatened each other. Where secrets gave way to shared burdens and where love was not a distraction from meaningful work, but its most powerful motivation.